All right, so when we talk about linear equations, again, big thing about linear is that they make a line. First four letters are line of linear. And so lines have slopes, constant slopes. And remember, slope is the steepness of a line. And there are a couple ways that we can calculate slope. One, remember that m does equal the slope. That's what m represents, the letter. And we can calculate the slope with the slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We can also do rise over run, or delta y over delta x. So remember, delta means change. So this means change in y over change in x. All right, then we also have the four different types of slopes. So we have positive slopes are going to go up from left to right. Our negative slopes go down from left to right. So if it's positive, that means your slope is going to be positive, greater than 0. If it's negative, that means your slope is a negative number, less than 0. You have a horizontal line if your slope is 0, because you're rising 0 and running any amount. 0 divided by anything is 0. And then if it's vertical, that's when it's undefined. And remember, that's because you're rising a certain amount and you're running 0. Anytime you have 0 on the bottom of a fraction, that's when it's undefined. Have the different equations of a line. So we have slope-intercept form, which again is y equals mx plus b. As we said, m is our slope. And what does the b represent? The y-intercept. And then we have point slope form, which is the y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So m is still your slope for point slope. And then x1 and y1 are just any point on the graph. Sorry, any point on the line, yes. Has to be on the line. And then our standard form is ax plus by equals c. Yeah. So in point slope form, the unnumbered x and y are just going to stay there because that would be like your input and your output. We'll go over some examples in a second. And then we have standard form, which is ax plus by equals c. So that's where your x and y are on the same side. Your a needs to be a whole number. So remember, whole numbers can't be negative, can't be decimals. Okay. And then your b and c also have to be integers. So remember, that just means it can't be decimal. So you can't have any decimal coefficients, or that constant on the right side can't be a decimal, and the number in front of the x should be positive. The book will also write it sometimes as ax plus by plus c equals 0. I don't really like that form, and to be honest, I never saw it anywhere other than this book. So just be aware, the book will sometimes write it that way. but for the most part, ax plus by equals c is going to be your standard form. All right, then we'll look at a few examples, and then you'll have some time to work. All right, so our first checkpoint just says find the slope. Okay, so if you're writing your notes, I would just write slope, and then you can write this ordered pair, these ordered pairs, -3, 4, and -4, -2. And so when you're finding the slope, remember we are using that slope formula, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which means we have to label our points. Remember, ordered pairs go x, y. And so since this is my first point, I'm going to label those as my ones. So my first x, my first y, and then my second x and my second y. I'm labeling that x2 and y2. And so we're just plugging them in. So y2 is -2 minus y1, which is 4, over x2 is -4 minus from our formula, x1 is -3. So when we do -2 minus 4, that gives us -6. Here we have double negatives. Double negatives make a positive, so this becomes plus. So -4 plus 3 is -1. So that gives us a slope of +6. All right, so that's how we find our slope. Then we can talk about finding the equation in point slope form. So if you're writing your notes, you can just write equation in point slope form. It tells us our slope is 6, and it's going through this point, -2, -5. So the information we're given is that our slope is 6, so m equals 6. Our point is 2, -5. And so that's our x1 and y1, because that's the given point. And it says to leave it in point slope form. So again, point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So if we're leaving it in point slope form, all we really need to do is substitute the 6 in for the m, the 2 in for the x1, so it'd be x minus 2, and then we'd have y plus 5, because we minus a -5. That is the point slope form. You can leave it like that if it says point slope. If we're asked to then put it in slope intercept form, then all you need to do is get the y by itself. So I would distribute the 6. Get 6x minus 12. And then I would get the y by itself by subtracting 5. So in slope intercept form, we would have y equals 6x minus 17. So depending on what form it tells you to leave it in is what you would do. And then our last problem is equation in point slope form, and we're just given 2 points. So if you're given 2 points, first thing we need to do is find the slope, because that's how we can write our equation. So my first x is negative 2, my first y is negative 1, my second x is negative 2, my second y is negative 6. And again, we need to find our slope. So I'm doing y2 minus y1, negative 6 minus a negative 1 over x2 negative 1 minus x1, so minus a negative 2. So in this case, both turn out to be double negatives, so plus and plus. Negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5. 2 minus 1 is positive 1. So we get negative 5 as our slope. We're not done because it's saying write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. Sorry, in point-slope form. So using point slope, we could use either of our points. Doesn't matter which one. And so if I use the negative 2, negative 1, it would become x plus 1 minus the negative 1 equals negative 5 times x plus 2. So that would be one way we could do point slope form. Or I could use the other point and do y plus 6. So it would be minus a negative 6 equals negative 5 times x plus 1 minus a negative 1. That's your other possible answer. So you could have either of those as your answers. It does say solve for y, so if I wanted to do slope-intercept form, that's where I would solve for y. And so again, all we have to do to solve for y is to distribute. So that would give me negative 5x minus 10, and I would subtract 1. So I get negative 5x plus 11. Sorry, minus 11. And you may think, well, aren't I getting two different answers? Well, no, because if I distributed that other one, I should get the same answer. So negative 5x minus 5, and I would subtract 6, and you end up with the same thing. Y equals negative 5x minus 11. So same answer either way.